Tiffany Henyard, the former mayor of Dalton, has found herself at the center of a major scandal that has left the town in a state of financial chaos. Henyard, once known for her extravagant spending, including spending nearly $200,000 on local banners with her face on them, has now come clean about her financial difficulties, revealing the stark contrast between her once lavish lifestyle and her current situation. Her plea for financial assistance has shocked many, considering her history of using taxpayer money for personal indulgences. While the people of Dalton struggled to make ends meet during her time in office, Henyard's spending habits were a major point of controversy. While the city faced mounting financial struggles, including essential services like the fire department operating without a contract for 5 years, Henyard seemed indifferent to the hardships of her constituents. She continued to lavishly spend public funds on herself, including a $1 million security detail and extravagant trips. Despite these overspending habits, essential services were neglected, and the average Dalton household barely managed to get by. Henyard's financial mismanagement didn't stop at overspending on personal luxuries. It was revealed that she had taken out millions of dollars in personal loans, using city infrastructure as collateral. This only further deepened the city's financial crisis, as creditors began to come after Henyard. Reports also indicated that vehicles belonging to the police department were at risk of being repossessed due to the growing debt. One of the most troubling aspects of Henyard's financial mismanagement involved her exploitation of the Section 8 housing program, designed to provide affordable housing for low-income families. Henyard owned a property that qualified for Section 8 payments, but the property was in a state of disrepair. The building was filled with mold, water damage, and other hazards, yet Henyard continued to collect government subsidies, ignoring the unsafe living conditions for her tenants. By November 2019, the property was deemed uninhabitable in addition to the Section 8 housing scandal. Henyard's actions were part of a broader pattern of corruption and financial abuse during her time as mayor. Instead of prioritizing the well-being of Dalton's residents, Henyard used her position of power to indulge in personal luxuries while the town's financial situation worsened. Her lavish trips, costly security detail, and excessive spending on personal banners were funded by the very taxpayers she was supposed to serve. Meanwhile, Dalton's residents endured unsafe living conditions, a lack of basic services, and financial instability due to her poor decision-making. The fallout from Henyard's tenure as mayor has been severe. The city is now grappling with an enormous financial crisis, with lawsuits from creditors, mounting debt, and an inability to pay its bills. Essential services like fire protection and police assistance are now at risk, leaving residents in fear that these services might be lost altogether. The damage Henyard caused during her time in office will likely take years to repair. If it can be repaired at all, Henyard's reckless spending and mismanagement have left a lasting stain on Dalton's history. The public is outraged, demanding accountability for her actions. However, despite the mounting evidence against her, Henyard has seemingly avoided responsibility. She has continued to live a life of luxury while the residents of Dalton suffer the consequences of her actions. The situation is further complicated by the fact that Henyard has apparently disappeared from the public eye, skipping over 25 board meetings and resigning from her position as mayor. In her absence, the town has been left without leadership, and the void she created has added to the uncertainty as the investigation into her financial dealings deepens. It is becoming clear that Henyard's actions were not just a case of poor financial management, but a deliberate pattern of corruption and fraud. Her ability to avoid accountability, despite the overwhelming evidence against her, has left the public furious. The people of Dalton, who once trusted her to lead them, are now left to pick up the pieces of the financial mess she created. The situation surrounding Henyard's downfall has led to a full-fledged criminal inquiry into her financial dealings. Investigators are examining her personal transactions, the misuse of taxpayer money, and her involvement in fraudulent schemes. Lori Leo, the former mayor of Chicago, is leading the investigation and is determined to uncover the full extent of Henyard's wrongdoing. As more details emerge, it is clear that Henyard's actions were part of a long-standing pattern of abuse of power. She used her position to manipulate the system for her own benefit, all while leaving Dalton's residents to suffer the consequences. The public's anger is only growing as they demand justice for the harm she caused. Meanwhile, Henyard is reportedly selling off her personal belongings in a desperate attempt to make ends meet. This is a far cry from the lavish lifestyle she once enjoyed, funded by Dalton's taxpayers. The situation in Dalton is dire, and it remains unclear how the town will recover from the financial crisis Henyard has left behind. The residents, who once relied on basic services like fire protection and police assistance, are now left in limbo, wondering if they will ever regain access to these vital services in the midst of the chaos. Henyard has requested financial assistance despite the millions of dollars she allegedly misused during her time as mayor. This has only fueled public outrage, as people are struggling to understand how she could squander taxpayer money so recklessly while asking for help to maintain her lifestyle. The FBI investigation into Henyard's financial dealings is ongoing, and it is becoming clear that her actions will have far-reaching consequences. The investigation is focused on uncovering the full extent of her corruption and financial mismanagement, and it is likely that more revelations will come to light as the probe continues, as Henyard's downfall continues to unfold. The people of Dalton are left to pick up the pieces of the financial disaster she created. It is unclear how the town will recover from the mess she left behind, but one thing is certain: the damage she caused will have lasting consequences for the residents of Dalton. The scandal surrounding her actions will be remembered as one of the darkest chapters in the town's history, and it is likely to take years to fully recover from the financial ruin she has caused. Ultimately, Henyard's lavish lifestyle, funded by taxpayer dollars, has led to her fall from grace. However, the true victims are the residents of Dalton, who will continue to bear the consequences of her greed and corruption for years to come. As the investigation continues and more details emerge, it is clear that Henyard's actions will have a lasting impact on Dalton, and the public is demanding accountability for the harm she has caused. Tiffany Henyard, the former mayor of Dalton, has been at the center of an ongoing scandal that has caused lasting damage to the town and its residents. Henyard's actions as mayor were marked by reckless financial mismanagement, corruption, and a blatant disregard for the people she was elected to serve. While Dalton's infrastructure and essential services crumbled, Henyard continued to indulge in personal luxuries, largely funded by taxpayer dollars. Now, as the consequences of her actions unfold, Henyard has become the subject of an FBI investigation, and the people of Dalton are left to face the fallout from her tenure. Throughout her time as mayor, Henyard's spending habits were both extravagant and controversial. One of the most notable examples of her wasteful spending was her $199,000 expenditure on banners that feature her own face. As the city struggled to keep essential services like the fire department operational and deal with a lack of contracts for years, Henyard seemingly felt no urgency to address these pressing issues. Instead, she poured taxpayer money into her personal luxuries, including an over-the-top security detail that cost the city over $133,000 in overtime. During a single pay period, this level of extravagance was in stark contrast to the struggles of Dalton's residents, who were barely making ends meet. With the fire department operating without a contract for 5 years and the police department's vehicles at risk of repossession, Henyard's priorities were clearly out of touch with the needs of the town. Worse still, she took out millions in personal loans using the city's infrastructure as collateral, pushing the city further into financial ruin and leaving creditors knocking at the door. However, Henyard's financial mismanagement extended beyond mere overspending. It was revealed that she exploited the Section 8 housing program, which was designed to provide affordable housing for low-income families. Henyard owned a property that qualified for Section 8 payments, but allowed it to deteriorate into unsafe conditions, including mold and water damage. Despite these hazardous living conditions, she continued to collect government subsidies for property. By 2019, the building was declared uninhabitable, but Henyard's disregard for the welfare of her tenants was just another chapter in a much broader pattern of corruption. The situation in Dalton grew even more concerning as Henyard continued to shift the blame for her actions. She attempted to make her former chief assistant, Keith Freeman, the scapegoat for financial mismanagement, alleging that Freeman had made all the financial decisions while positioning herself as a puppet under his control. However, as mayor, Henyard was ultimately responsible for the town's finances. No amount of finger-pointing could absolve her of the blame. The people of Dalton were left to face the consequences of her negligence, greed, and corruption. As Henyard's downfall unfolded, her behavior became more erratic. She reportedly vanished from the public eye, skipping over 25 board meetings and resigning from her position as mayor. The town of Dalton was now leaderless, with residents facing even more uncertainty and anger. Henyard's disappearance, coupled with her attempts to place the blame on others, only deepened a sense of betrayal and frustration among the people who once trusted her to lead them. The ongoing investigation into Henyard's finances has begun to piece together the full scope of her wrongdoing. Each revelation has painted a more damning picture of the former mayor, whose leadership was defined by a complete disregard for the needs of Dalton's residents. What was once a promising leadership role has now become a cautionary tale of greed, mismanagement, and abuse of power. The residents of Dalton, who had already endured years of hardship, are now left to pick up the pieces of a broken town. The FBI investigation is still underway, and it seems that Henyard's financial dealings will only continue to unravel. Her actions have not only led to the mismanagement of taxpayer funds, but also to a pattern of coercion, and unethical behavior involving employees and local business owners. Reports suggest that Henyard engaged in bullying and pressuring local business owners to comply with her agenda. One business owner, Lawrence Gardner, claims that he was harassed by the Dalton police and had his business license canceled after refusing to participate in one of Henyard's schemes. Other employees have come forward with allegations that they were fired for refusing to help Henyard hide public documents or engage in unethical activities. These accusations paint a picture of a mayor who used her power to manipulate others for her own benefit, contributing further to the town's financial and moral decay. One of the most troubling revelations to come from the investigation is that Henyard allegedly borrowed money using city infrastructure as collateral. Public property, which was supposed to be used to benefit the people of Dalton, was reportedly put on the line to secure personal loans for Henyard. This practice not only crosses an ethical line, but it is also potentially illegal. The mayor was not only misusing taxpayer dollars, but also using the very infrastructure of Dalton to finance her personal financial schemes. The people of Dalton, already dealing with the fallout from Henyard's reckless spending, are now faced with the additional burden of dealing with the consequences of these dubious financial decisions. The fallout from Henyard's financial mismanagement is becoming more complex and far-reaching by the day. The town is already dealing with a massive financial crisis, with Dalton's credit rating in ruins, police vehicles at risk of repossession, and essential services like the fire department still without contracts. Residents are left with the uncomfortable reality that their former mayor's decisions have left the town in an economic tailspin. With public resources being used to finance her personal debt, the people of Dalton are now left to wonder how the town can recover from the mess Henyard has created. Henyard's desperate attempts to regain control of her situation have raised eyebrows, particularly when it was revealed that she had launched a GoFundMe campaign to raise money to pay off her debts. The irony of this request is not lost on Dalton residents, who are still reeling from the news that Henyard spent taxpayer dollars recklessly on lavish vacations and security details, while the town's financial health crumbled. Henyard is now reportedly asking for donations to cover expenses like the banner costs and her extravagant getaways. All while the town faces dire financial straits, many Dalton residents are baffled by the fact that Henyard has managed to raise nearly $155,000 to the GoFundMe campaign, especially given the devastation she left in her wake. Critics argue that Henyard may be using the campaign as a last-ditch effort to cover up her mistakes and avoid facing the full consequences of her actions. Some speculate that she may be using the funds to escape the country and avoid prosecution, as she has done before when facing scandal. Her request for money, particularly from the very people she once swindled, has been viewed by many as a final insult to the resident of Dalton. Henyard's GoFundMe campaign has raised significant funds, but has also fueled anger and resentment among the people of Dalton. The campaign is seen by many as an opportunistic grab for money, a way for Henyard to escape responsibility for her actions. The town is facing a growing number of lawsuits, and the financial mess Henyard created is far from over. Despite her efforts to deflect blame and raise money for herself, the people of Dalton are watching closely, hoping that justice will finally prevail. The consequences of Henyard's actions are undeniable. Her time as mayor has left Dalton with massive debt, crumbling infrastructure, and a deep sense of betrayal among the residents. The investigation into her finances is ongoing, and it is clear that her actions will have lasting repercussions for years to come. However, as the investigation continues and the truth begins to emerge, the people of Dalton are beginning to hope that they will finally receive the justice they deserve. Henyard's downfall may be just the beginning of a much larger reckoning for the town, and the residents are determined to see that she is held accountable for her actions. The situation surrounding Tiffany Henyard, the former mayor of Dalton, continues to escalate, becoming increasingly perplexing and infuriating for the town's residents. Henyard, who once lived a lavish lifestyle funded by taxpayer dollars, is now attempting to raise money through a GoFundMe campaign, which many view as a desperate attempt to cover up her wrongdoing. This move has only added to the growing frustration and confusion surrounding her financial mismanagement and questionable actions during her time in office. Henyard's tenure as mayor was marked by financial recklessness, including the infamous $199,000 she spent on welcome banners featuring her own face. She also lavishly funded security details, extravagant vacations, and personal luxuries, all while the town's essential services were in dire need of funding. Meanwhile, Dalton's residents suffer from the effects of her mismanagement, including overdue contract for services, a crumbling infrastructure, and a town on the brink of financial collapse. With the town's credit rating severely damaged and police vehicles at risk of repossession, Henyard's extravagant spending left the town with a mountain of debt. Despite the devastation Henyard caused, she now seeks to raise money from the very people she exploited for years through a GoFundMe campaign. The irony of this request has not gone unnoticed. Residents are baffled that Henyard, who once spent taxpayer money recklessly, is now pleading for financial help. Many believe that her campaign is less about genuine need and more about manipulating the public to fund her escape from the consequences of her actions. The GoFundMe campaign, which has raised nearly $155,000, has sparked intense criticism. While some speculate that Henyard is genuinely trying to raise money to pay off mounting debts, many believe this is simply another scam in a long line of dubious actions. The fact that Henyard, who once enjoyed a celebrity-like status, is now seemingly begging for money raises questions about her motivations. Why would someone who lives so extravagantly now claim to be in need of funds, especially when the town itself is on the verge of collapse due to her actions in addition to her lavish lifestyle? Henyard's actions have led to even more financial chaos in Dalton. The fire department, for instance, has been without a contract for years, while critical services have gone underfunded. Henyard's time in office was characterized by a failure to address these issues, all while she prioritized her own personal comfort over the town's needs. Now, as Dalton struggles to recover, Henyard appears to be attempting to shift the focus to herself, playing the victim in hopes of winning public sympathy. This hypocrisy has not gone unnoticed. Henyard's GoFundMe campaign is seen by many as an attempt to escape the repercussions of her actions, using the very same taxpayers she exploited for years to fund her escape. Critics argue that her actions reflect a clear pattern of manipulation, with Henyard now playing a victim to distract from her financial mismanagement. Some even speculate that she may be using her identity and political affiliations to avoid facing the full consequences of her actions, as accusations surface that she is leveraging what some describe as black privilege to deflect criticism and avoid accountability. The situation surrounding Henyard has grown increasingly bizarre as more details emerge about her financial troubles. As the FBI investigation into her finances continues, Henyard's attempt to raise money through GoFundMe is seen as a desperate measure to cover up her mistakes and avoid facing the consequences of her actions. Many Dalton residents have grown skeptical of her claims and are demanding accountability for the chaos she has caused. Henyard's campaign to raise funds now seems to many like nothing more than a last-ditch effort to salvage her wealth and status. With little regard for the harm she has caused the town, Henyard's past is full of contradictions, and her current actions are adding to confusion. She once lived a life of luxury, funded by taxpayer dollars, while Dalton services and infrastructure crumbled around her. Now, she has turned to those same taxpayers, asking them to bail her out. The town, which is facing a financial crisis due to her reckless spending, is now expected to fund her escape. For many, this is a bridge too far. The residents of Dalton, already frustrated by Henyard's previous actions, are no longer willing to let her off the hook as the investigation into her finances presses forward. Henyard's GoFundMe campaign is starting to look more like an opportunistic attempt to cover up mistakes and escape the consequences of her actions. Many believe that the campaign is not about genuine need, but rather about raising money to pay off debts or worse, to fund her next escape. Henyard has a history of disappearing when faced with scandal, and some fear that she's using this campaign to finance another vanishing act. Of growing criticism of Henyard's GoFundMe campaign reflects the deep anger and frustration felt by Dalton residents. They are no longer willing to allow her to manipulate the public or evade responsibility for her actions. Many believe that Henyard is trying to play on people's emotions and appeal to their sense of charity or sympathy in hopes of dodging the consequences of her financial mismanagement. However, as more details of her wrongdoing continue to emerge, it is becoming increasingly clear that the public is no longer willing to buy into her narrative. Henyard's attempts to deflect blame and play the victim have not gone unnoticed. While some may still support her, the majority of Dalton residents are growing more vocal in their demands for accountability. The GoFundMe campaign, far from being a genuine cry for help, is seen as yet another manipulative action in a long line of dubious decisions made during her time in office. Henyard's request for money seems to be a last-ditch effort to escape the financial mess she has created. Without facing any real consequences for her actions, the situation in Dalton has become a hot mess, and Henyard is at the center of it all. Her financial mismanagement, combined with her efforts to avoid responsibility, has left the town in shambles. As the investigation into her finances intensifies, the truth about Henyard's actions is becoming more evident. While she may still believe that she can manipulate the public into bailing her out, the residents of Dalton are beginning to see through her act. They are no longer willing to let her escape the consequences of her actions. Henyard's downfall is quickly becoming inevitable, and the question now is how long it will take for her to face the consequences of her actions. Will she continue to hide behind her GoFundMe campaign, or will she finally be held accountable for the financial chaos she has caused in Dalton? The residents of Dalton are determined to ensure that justice is served, and that Henyard cannot manipulate her way out of the mess she has created. As the investigation moves forward and more details are revealed, it seems clear that Henyard's time is running out. The people of Dalton are no longer willing to let her get away with her actions, and it's only a matter of time before she must face the consequences.